colleagues. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this important webinar. I hope everyone can hear me. Good evening. So we are here to celebrate the leadership of persons with disabilities and to discuss ways to promote inclusion. So for us to move further, we will be welcoming the ED of Youth Hub Development Initiative to give us a welcome address. Please, can we welcome Praise for, okay? I said I should speak more louder. Can we welcome Praise to give us a welcome address and introduction? Thank you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Good evening, and it's good to have us on the call today. So, welcome to the Disability Advocacy webinar series. And our focus, which is like our team, is leading beyond disability. I just hope you can hear me clearly. So, I won't want to really speak so long. My call here is just to welcome us and to briefly state what we do at the Youth Development Initiative. So, one of the reasons why we had to put up something like this, of course, was to commemorate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which was on Tuesday, 3rd December. And we thought to have a conversation relating to the team. And not just that, this is because a focus area for us and what we actually do is that we are building leaders that are passionate about causing change in their communities, especially persons with disabilities. And our vision is actually that we look and we envision a society that is inclusive for all, empowers persons with disabilities to lead initiatives, and inspires positive change in their communities. And we have focus areas in which we do this, and one of which is the disability advocacy, which is why this webinar is happening. We have other areas like education, creativity, technology, and therapy. So it is my honor once again to welcome us to this section. Thank you very much. Favor? I think Favor has a little challenge with her network because I can see from here she's trying to join in again. So I will just briefly introduce the next speaker who is going to be taking us on her keynote address, and then we would also have the second person come up. So we have two persons who will be taking us on their keynote address. We have the special assistant to the governor on special needs for Benue State, and we also have the disability research manager who also doubles as my coach from the University of Georgia. She would also be taking us on that. Just to be sure, Favor, are you back?
Yes, thank you, Praise.
All
I'm
right.
back.
Thank you. Hi, Favor. You can go on. I'm done. Please go on.
Thank you very much.
All
So
right.
we would start by welcoming our keynote speakers, Honorable Ben. I would introduce him in a bit. Sorry, 1 minute. Okay, permit me to start with Irene Benson. We'll be welcoming Irene Benson for a keynote address. Can we please welcome Irene Benson for her keynote speech? Thank you.
Thank you, Favor. It's very nice to meet you, and Praise, always lovely to hear your voice. I'm honored and really excited to be with you today. I come from across the Atlantic. I'm from a little place in Athens, Georgia, in the United States, where it's 10 a.m. for me. So I'll say good evening to you, and you can say good morning to me. I've had the pleasure last year of traveling to Africa for the very first time and working on disability advocacy with a dear friend of mine who was a member of the Mandela Fellows project, where I was invited to go to Sierra Leone, where I actually got to swim in the Atlantic on that side, and work with an incredible group of people in the community. He has an organization called Hope for the Blind, and we went throughout the community and got to talk to people with disabilities about their experiences in trying to access education. And through that, we were able to develop a training program to raise awareness and a call to action for access in higher education. So as I was preparing for today's keynote, I was thinking about this concept came to mind about a hero's journey. Sometimes it's called a monolith. And so I'd like to just kind of walk you through that real quick as I kind of explain my worldview of disability and the relationship between the individual and the environment. So if you can take a moment to think about a myth or legend or even movie or story that you love. I'm going to walk you through just the concept of what a hero's journey is. Please know I'm not a literary scholar. But so this is my abridged version of a hero's journey. So now that you hopefully have a story in mind, we start with a hero's journey. It's kind of our act one, where it's the departure, where an individual has a call to adventure. They've lived in this normal, safe, quiet world, and then something from outside is calling them to take action and move forward. At first, there's doubt in oneself and one's abilities. There's fear. But through a partnership or mentorship, or as Praise lovely said, coaching, the individual begins to see that this is something that they're destined to do, that they have to do. And so that we shift into our act two, where we're talking about the initiation. And this is where we get a little supernatural, but we're not going to do that for the purposes of today, because we are talking about the real world that we live in. And it's considered the road of trials and tests. And so this is where our hero is in a new world, and they're encountering all these barriers, this conflict with other people, conflict with being able to continue on their journey. It could be a broken bridge. And towards the end, they learn about how they can operate and how they can move forward. They metamorphosize into who they believe that they can be. And then they come back to their calm, safe environment, knowing both sides of the world. And so I say it as hope, right? It's neat. There's a person who's doubted themselves. They're going through this story. I think that in itself, when we talk about disability, is really compelling. But I also want to pose that people with disabilities have to go through a hero's journey every single day. How exhausting is that, to have to go out into the world and experience such trials and tribulations that the environment, the world has created, be it by man, be it by nature, be it by different perceptions. So that in itself exposes the resilience, which I think is a compelling and important piece when we think about leadership and learning and really looking at the environment that we're in and how we can make change. So as we take this hero's journey concept, I want to think about what we can do with this knowledge, knowing that when we step outside of our comfortable space, For example, when I was in Sierra Leone, my favorite place to go was to a school for blind children. And there are children from 4 years old all the way up to 18. And they lived there, they studied there, but when they would turn about 10 or 12, they would have to leave the property to go to secondary school, where every day they would encounter barriers in transportation. Uh, as a person with a disability, what was reported to me was that it was very, very difficult to get a motorbike driver to come and pick you up and take you to these locations. And then they go into the learning space, and where they've always had books on tape or books in braille, they're having to just listen and not being able to access all of the reading materials and the learning, and yet they're persisting. And the thing that really resonated with me with that, when I was getting to talk to them when they would come back, was that they were willing to go through this hero's journey every single day because they believed in themselves and they had dreams and aspirations. They had purpose that continued to drive them. They wanted to be lawyers. They wanted to work in government. They wanted to be doctors. They saw themselves and believed that. And that purpose is so important. So when we take our hero's journey, when we take the individual's desire, and then when we think about what power do we have as persons with disabilities and without to control the world that we're in. So that leads me to close and really encouraging us to think with leadership as to how we can create change in the environments. Is it changing policy? Is it putting in a ramp instead of a staircase to get to a building? When we focus on that, we are creating that leadership and creating a legacy so that someday our young children with disabilities will not have to go on a hero's journey every single day. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited and honored to be here, and would love to connect with you offline. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. And so I believe, pass it back to Favor. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and I look forward to continuing to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Irene. We are so grateful. Thank you so much for your provoking insights and the knowledge you have shared. Thank you. We are grateful. So, moving on, we'll be welcoming our next guest speaker, and he's by name Honorable Ben Batlomi. He's a personal assistant to the Executive Governor of Benue State on special needs, and also former chairman joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities, Benue State chapter. So can we all please welcome Honorable Ben Batlomi for his keynote speech. Thank you.
So you've actually been unmuted, so you can take on your section.
Okay, as we're waiting for Honorable then, is it possible? Do you have any question? Does any of us have any question in regards to what Erin Benson just said? Any question, please? Can we all share our voices to include and to increase inclusion for people living with disabilities? Any questions?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm by name Michael Abakba. And then once again, I want to thank her for that wonderful session. And the issue of disability cannot be overstressed. And so I would like to ask a few questions from what she said so far. She actually gave an illustration of those a special school for those with disability from the age of 5 to 12 or so, thereabout, after which they will be left to their fate as to how to proceed from there to higher institutions. So I want to ask, I believe that that situation, that scenario is peculiar to Georgia. I think she said she's from Georgia also. Is there anything that is being done to see how that to see how these people can be cared for even after they leave that particular special school after the age of 12 or 13? I
That's
don't
a
know if you get
great
my
Yeah, and
okay.
that's something that we struggle with in the States as well. The specific story was based in Sierra Leone, and so from that was really one of the big things that we were trying to raise awareness on, is the fact that we do have systems in place, but then what happens beyond? What is that transition from that safe space into the world? And so one of our big pieces in the advocacy that we were doing was to raise awareness for universities and colleges to think about how they can create more inclusive learning environments. So, for example, some of the buildings that students who were registered with the university were trying to attend only had stairs. And so they either had to rely on friends, if they used a wheelchair, friends to lift them up and carry them up the stairs. Sometimes that would be 4 flights of stairs. Other times it would be the test would need to be read aloud, and so it would really depend on whether or not the professor was willing to let that person sit and have the test read aloud to them. And so when we shift from those safe spaces that have been built for us, it's wonderful because we know what the possibility is. We know what works for us and how we can work in the world. And I think the big step from a leadership standpoint in the field that I've been in is really thinking about exactly what you're saying is what are we doing once that transition happens? Because even what I saw was individuals would persist through college and then finding work would be the next challenge. And oftentimes that was more based on the perceptions of the community or the employers as to what a person with disabilities would be able to be capable of doing. So I think there's a lot of work to do, and I admit that that's not just in my experience in Africa, that's in my experience in the States too, of how do we get people to put disability as something that's on the front of their mind instead of an afterthought. What are those things that we can be doing to really think about how we can create spaces proactively instead of trying to come up with these solutions that only really work if you have the support of the small community of friends that you have to lift you up over those stairs and get you to where you need to be. What I've seen mostly, and I'm not saying that I'm an expert within specifically to Sierra Leone, but what I've seen mostly is that the reliance on that is on non-government organizations or partnerships with government to create foundations and groups that are able to assist. So again, my friend Abukar Kamara from Sierra Leone set up Hope for the Blind, which was specifically to help individuals with that transition and advocate for them to get connected and get the support they need in higher education as well as in the workplace. Does that help answer your question?
Okay, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you very
Hi,
much.
it's nice to see your
Thank
face. Oh, I scared you. Sorry.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Iriam Benson, for the question answered. Again, we are very grateful. So to be
Thank you.
sure, can everyone hear me? Oh, you can hear me. Okay. So moving on, we'll be welcoming our special guest speakers for the next agenda. We'll start by welcoming our own very Iriam Benson, the keynote speaker that just finished answering the question. So Irene Benson is a doctoral candidate researching how word building can enhance disability in organizations. As a director of accessibility and testing at the University of Georgia, she leads a team focused on ensuring equal access for students with disabilities and leading operative accessibility efforts. Irene has coached Mandela's fellow scholars on development, community-based disability projects for over 5 years and collaborated with Mandela's fellow alum and non-profit Hope for the Blind to develop leaders to excuse to develop training for post-secondary education leaders. Outside of work, she is a wife, a mother of two, and serves as the board of Locust Farm supporting families with premature babies in Georgia. Erin, we are highly welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Moving on, we'll be welcoming Punet Singh, is the co-founder and chief discovery officer of Billion Strong, leading global initiatives for disability and inclusion. He also provides assistive technology consultancy for the International Disability Alliance. Born into poverty and facing domestic violence, Punet has lived in pushing advocacy. He conducts workshops and mentorship programs addressing intersectional issues like disability, climate change, and social justice. Also, he has been awarded and honored by Forbes with the Commonwealth Innovation Award 2003. Please, can we join our hands together as we welcome Punet singer. Thank you so much. Moving further, we have our special guest speaker. Chioma Precious is a lawyer and a public health advocate with over 7 years of experience. She leads Child's Project Reach, providing healthcare, education, persons in Abuja. She promotes child development and underserved communities. Please, can we welcome Chioma Precious? Thank you, thank you. And last but not the least, for our panel section, can we all welcome Ayedoji Opeyemi Barakat. She is committed in special needs advocacy and the founder of Inclusive Families Cycle. Her work supports families of children with learning challenges. She is also a volunteer with Learning Support Academy. Ayodeji crafts content to raise awareness and provide practical solutions for family navigating special needs. Please, can we join our hands together as we welcome Barakat? Thank you, thank you. Please, if they are all here, I don't know if they can share their screen or join. Okay, okay. Are they all here? So is it possible for all our special guests to unmute their mic for our next agenda? Okay.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Chama Precious Ejiofor. Thank you for having
Shama,
me.
you're highly welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're highly welcome, Precious Shama. You're highly welcome. Okay, I don't know if Barakat, please can
Good
you
evening, everyone. Yes, good
hi
evening, everyone. I'm so excited to join you in this important conversation.
we are so excited to have you too. Thank you so much. Please, I don't know if Punet is around. Punet.
Hi, Favor. Punit has his network. He had a network glitch, so
Okay,
he
Punet.
will join in. So I think you can just go on with the persons on the call already.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll be moving on to our next agenda, which is asking our guest speakers questions that can help change the narrative of, PWDs, especially in Nigeria. So please, is it possible to start with Chioma? Chioma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much once more for joining in.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with this question. Number one, what is the way PWDs can place the government accountable, sorry, as relates to government funded projects? I'll come back again. What is the way people with disabilities can place the government accountable as relates to government funded projects?
Thank you very much for that question. Thank you to the first speaker who connected with us and shared her perspective from, from the foreign landscape and all of that. And I can relate a lot to the response she gave to the question. Because at my organization, we still struggle with a lot of institutional compliance. So I mean, it was very interesting to get to know that people in the abroad, in quotes, are having, issues like that when they are supposed to be well ahead of us. Now to your question, I'm going to start by, first of all, applauding the current disability landscape that we have in Nigeria. Reason being that before the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act was enacted in 2018, we really didn't have so much. We were most dependent on policies and conventions, international treaties that we domesticated, that we all know that implementation was quite an issue. And so we had different laws that spoke on disability, like the albinism law, different things that may not have, formed what we have now as the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act. And I remember that just after that act in 2018, we were very happy in the space, in the industry where I belong, and we quickly started dissecting the act. But while I applaud the government, I must also say that implementation is mostly always a problem in Nigeria. And so to respond to your question, I'll be very, very blunt to say that I believe that in the system we are in, nobody is coming to save you. I know that I may sound, very, very serious, but the truth is really people living with disabilities, sorry, please, have the responsibility of compelling action, right? And when I say, for me, it is a very profound word to say people with disabilities, because you must recognize that even if you feel like you are not living with a disability, your eyes can give way tomorrow and you find yourself using glasses. You already have a disability. People who are involved in accidents never planned to lose a leg, and just in a twinkle of an eye, you already have a disability. And for me, I believe that disability is not because you are deficient in any area, it's because a part of you needs some form of assistance. And so this disability relates to all of us, no matter how religious we can be about it. And so permit me to not say people with disability, to not to respond to this question and narrow it down to only people with disability, because it can happen to any one of us that feel like we don't have a disability, right? You can lose any part of the efficient body part that you seem to need no assistance with right now. And so I would say that we all are stakeholders in this, not just people with disabilities, because whether if we want to be sincere with ourselves, we are needing assistance in one or more areas as age goes by. And so a number of things that we can do is, like I said, nobody's coming to save us, is to begin to ask for the implementation of the law. Yes, I started by applauding the new law, right? Well, it's not quite new anymore because it's about 6 years old now, but there are many things in that law that are not implemented. We have provisions like infrastructural accommodations. How many of our eateries, how many of our churches, mosques, how many of our public places, institutions, government institutions have accommodations for that suits the physical infrastructure that people with physical disabilities will assess and have a better life? How many of them? Right? So we need the implementation of this law. And so if you ask me, the very first on my list would be implementation of the law. I believe that if we have this law implemented, right, it is going to go a long way in helping us to get government projects, giving us access to government projects. I wouldn't want to go into details what government project means to me, the definition of government project, because that's quite a relative word. But implementation of this law will help us. And right, it now boils down to the fact that this law is a federal law, quite very much operational in the FCT, but cannot apply to states that do not adopt it. And so number two on my list would be how can you do this if states are not, how can you even demand for anything if the states that you want to make these demands on have not adopted it? Sorry, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Chioma.
Okay. And so how else can all of us remember that I am not narrowing it down to only people with disabilities. Now, how else can all of us get the government to be accountable, rather demand a measure of accountability for the government? It is by what we are doing now, advocacy and mobilization. Raise the dust, lend your voices, do not keep quiet wherever you belong to. Go ahead and say something. If you are in a place of making decisions, go ahead and say something. Go ahead and publish that thing. We are in an era where the media is very powerful, and then the social media is very powerful as well. You can begin to talk about the provisions of this law and how it will be beneficial to this group of people. Currently, we had a national dialogue on on the inclusion of persons with disability in the criminal justice system. And it was quite a lot, because, a lot of people shared their views, a lot of people with disabilities shared their experiences. And you get to see that in my world as a lawyer, we are trying to be inclusive, and that's why we are trying to include them in the criminal justice system. So in your world as a medical doctor, in your world as an engineer, in your world as an architect, if you find out that there is a government project in your hand and you're supposed to do a plan for a 5-story building or commence a project of a building, and people with disabilities are not included, it is your responsibility to say something. It is your responsibility to hold the government accountable in that niche where you belong. And I'll round up by saying, in response to your question, that we can also leverage international mechanisms, right? Again, this is one way to do that, because Nigeria has ratified quite a number of treaties that implementation is still quite a problem. And so yeah, let me just stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chioma. That was very insightful. We are grateful. From what you said, I've come to understand, especially in our nation, Nigeria, we can come together to discuss, have advocacy meeting, have capacity building meeting, come with solutions. But our problem is the implementation. Thank you for that. We are grateful. So moving on to our next question. Our next question will be going to Aye Dijo Barakat. Please, can you unmute your mic? Forgive me if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. My mother's tongue.
Okay.
Thank you. You're highly welcome, Ma.
Okay. Thank you.
So, the question is, what are the ways parents with children who have disability or who are PWDs encourage their children to be more interested in taking up leadership roles? So I'll come again with the question. What are the ways parents with children who are PWDs can encourage their children to take up roles as leadership, being a creative? So what are the encouragement do you give to such parents? Thank you.
Okay. Let me start with this. As a parent or caregiver of a child with disability, you are supposed to realize that the fight for your child's well-being doesn't end when the day does, because it's a constant journey of advocating for your child's rights. So, as a parent, you have to fight for the rights of your child's education, their health care, and most importantly, their dignity. Because for many families out there, they need to advocate for their child's well-being. And this advocacy begins quietly at home. For instance, it can be at the kitchen table with late night conversation about how to navigate a new diagnosis or how to ask for the right support. But advocacy doesn't always look the same for every family. So as a parent, you need to stand up at a school meeting to ensure your child get the accommodation they need. Because if you are able to do that, you are trying to speak out to the community to raise an awareness about the challenges your family is facing. It might even be a personal victory, a small personal victory, like helping your child speak their truth in their own way. Because I have witnessed the incredible strength and resilience of families who not only fight for the care of their children, but also fight for their child voice to be heard. And I have also seen parents who turn their heartbreak into purpose, working tirelessly to make sure their child is not just seen as someone to care for, but as someone to be celebrated, being valued and empowered. So with all this, parents need to ensure that empathy is also at the core of advocacy, because it's about understanding that every child has a unique journey and every family has their own set of challenges. Because empathy, it calls us to act, to use our voice to create systems that are more inclusive and more compassionate. Because when we look at families with children with disability, they are kind of people, they are love, dedication, and unwavering support to be given to their children. On their own, they are already an advocate for their child. So when they share their stories and they teach others about their journey, about their stories, so then people will be able to learn more about them. And most importantly, what I say about this is that when parents raise a child with, when they raise a child with special needs, they are both, it has a reward. That's the reward, because balancing caregiving responsibility while nurturing the leadership skills of that child, it will help that child grow into a confident, independent individual. So one of the most powerful ways families can help their children with disability thrive in a society, especially, is to identify and nurture their unique talents and interests. So all these things, it all starts with the parents focusing on their strengths, not their weaknesses. So as parents, it's easy to focus on what your child can do, but what they can do, what they are capable of doing. Because with that, you are opening up opportunity for growth and confidence for the child. So most importantly, I believe when parents focus on the strength and the ability that children need to have, they also create a positive environment for them. Because when the environment is suitable for the child, it encourages them, especially in their growth, in their learning aspects and the leadership ways. Because, for example, when you consider a child with autism, okay, so when you look at a child with autism, a child that have exceptional, for example, now, when a child with special needs, they have different skills. Some of them, they are good in one way and the other. For example, now, a child that has autism, the child is good in mathematics, or the child has an incredible attention to detail, rather than focusing on the areas where the child is struggling. So as a parent, what you just need to do is that you have to celebrate this unique strength of the child. Maybe the child has a passion for drawing, maybe solving puzzles or any gift. It might be a tech gift, anything, because these children, they are really skillful. So the parents just need to pay attention to all these areas. So they need to make sure that they help that child set their goals that are aligned with their interests and talents. So all these things will boost self-esteem and confidence in the child. So with that, I think okay. So and when parents are they need tailor goals for their development, because when you identify the unique strengths of the child, so you need to know that this child has to meet a specific goal in that particular thing that the child is doing. So because when we are talking about that setting tailored goals, it's about ensuring that the children with disability can still achieve that milestone at their own space. So when setting goals, it shows that this looks like a challenge to them, but don't overwhelm them. You know, these children, when they are being overwhelmed, they won't feel like doing anything again. So parents need to understand their child. They need to know what their child is good at and what the child is not good at. So and the most important thing is just that parents need to provide support and guidance without taking over anything from a child. For example, if your child has a special interest in something like maybe the coding or maybe anything, so even at home, if the child has, because there are some children by they like assisting, they don't want to sit down. So that kind of parents, they just need to allow the child to participate in tasks given to them. So all this is going to help the child in leadership qualities. It will help them in to help them let me round it up. Um, so the most important thing I can say about families with children with disabilities is that they should just stay committed to child growth. They should stay committed with it. They should nurture their strengths, set achievable goals, and allow them to experience leadership in a way that's really meaningful to them. Thank you. I'm done. Hello.
Okay, can you hear me now? Thank you so much, Barakat. Thank you so much. I would say my takeaway word is identify and nurture their unique talents. That is speaking to parents to identify and to nurture their unique talent. Thank you so much, Barakat. We are grateful for that insightful answer. So moving on, um, we'll be asking our great esteemed Irene Benson a question. Ma, are you still with us, please? Irene Benson? Okay. So, Ma, Irene, how can we ensure that the world we live in is more accessible to people with disabilities?
I love that question. And I also just want to acknowledge the other speakers. I've been here taking notes. There's so many things that really just kind of resonate with me and so important. And Tigger, I've appreciated how you've been able to so succinctly pull everything together, encapsulate that of the little things that we can take away. So how can we make our environments more inclusive? This I remember being a child, my best friend, she uses a wheelchair for mobility, and it was astonishing especially once we got a little bit older and wanted to be independent and go out and, go to a store or go to an area to play. And so from a very young age, I began to kind of observe the barriers that are put in place by people, right? There's the topography. Those are some barriers that we might not be able to have as much control over. But we can get innovative and come up with ways to figure out how people can be able to engage in those spaces. There's technology out there with wheelchairs that could allow someone to go out into a forest and be able to engage with nature. But I think the big thing, the big focus that we need to continue to be working on is that proactive uh, design piece, right? When we're thinking about the new buildings that we're making, let's think about all the different users. Someone said earlier, disability could be something that you are born with, but disability can happen to all of us. And quite frankly, the older we get, the more likely that we are going to also experience barriers as our health declines or our muscles grow tired. So I think that's such an important factor for us to remind the communities about, is that we're not just talking about one person, and we're not just talking about now in this moment. This is something that is a continuum throughout the lifespan of individuals. So the approach that I've really been sort of leaning into for the past, I would say probably 10 years, is really focusing on the concept of universal design or inclusive design. So earlier I mentioned, the stairs that were a barrier to a student to be able to even physically attend the class, and that reliance not on the organization but on peers to help. And that's wonderful, right? When we have people in the community that want to work together and help, that's fabulous. But we also want to support independence and allow someone to be able to access and be a part of the community at any time. And so instead of those stairs, we could have a ramp. That is one of the just most low-hanging fruit or easiest things we could potentially do in some of the spaces that we occupy that would greatly increase. And that would not only help our students who have, or our visitors or the individuals who have a physical disability that is impacting them, it's also going to help. It could help a new mother or someone who has recently broken their leg and they're recovering. These are things that are beneficial and helpful for anyone, but it's something that is often just an afterthought again. It's something that we don't think about when we're in design phases. And that can be from policy, that can be procedure. What are those things that we have as a community control over in how we design and build things? So I think a lot of times for someone who hasn't had a lot of experience working with or living with or being friends with people with disabilities, is that they don't know. They don't think about whether or not the threshold to get into a building has a couple of stairs. They don't think about that until it's face to face with them for that first time. And then we have to kind of build beyond that and not just say, hey, well, if we do this, this one individual can now be able to access your space. But we're doing this for the benefit of everyone. Everyone at some point in their life is going to need some sort of help with access. And it's benefiting everyone when we're focusing on the needs on the of sort of on the outskirts or the edges of things where people don't think. Captions is a wonderful example. Zoom allows me to just click a button and I can have those auto captions. It's really helpful for me because I have trouble sometimes focusing. So being able to listen and see is really helpful. Do I need it as an accommodation or a piece of access? No, but it benefits me and how I learn and my style. So I think those are some of the big things that we can take into consideration, is really looking at the world that we have control over as something that we can help to continue to design to make more inclusive. So Favorite, that's such a wonderful question. I don't know if I addressed fully what you were looking for, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Yes, Ma, you addressed the question. We are grateful. Thank you so much. We are grateful. Thank you. So I wanted to know, is Punit around now? Punit Singhal, is he available now? Okay, if he's not, we'll be asking another of our guest speaker a question. Barakat, please can you unmute? Thank you once more. So this question is, how does the immediate family affect how persons with disabilities interact with the public and their decisions to take on leadership roles? I would ask that again. How does the immediate family affect how persons with disabilities interact with the public and their decisions to take leadership roles? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let me start with the meaning of what leadership is all about. Leadership, we often imagine leadership as something like CEOs, politicians, or being a public figures. But the thing is that true leadership starts closer to home. It starts in the heart of families that who believe in the potential of every child, no matter their abilities. So I'm as someone, let me use my home case as an instance. As someone who grew up in a family where we faced the challenges of caring for a child with cerebral palsy and speech challenges, because I once had a sister who has speech challenges and also cerebral palsy. I learned that leadership is not about the big stages. It's about the quiet, the everyday actions that make a difference. Because it's in a way a parent advocates for their child, the way siblings offer support, or how family learns to rise above challenges together. So families are the first place where leadership can be nurtured. So this is where resilience is built, where understanding begins, and where the seeds of advocacy are being planted. So for children with disability, it is their families that who first recognize the leadership within them, and they create that space for them to shine. So the power of families in leading beyond disability is not just about providing care, it's about it's not about providing care. So it's about you empowering children with disability to lead. So for you to advocate for themselves and to know that they too can create a future where they are seen and valued. Let me share a story with you. Um, at the FIFA World Cup in year 2022, a moment that 2022, the FIFA World Cup, there is a particular person, Ghanim Al Muftar. So he's a young man born with cauda regression syndrome. So that condition that affects the development of his lower spine. So he was on the stage alongside with the legendary Morgan Freeman in front of millions. So he spoke about different things, which was inclusion, diversity, and unity. So now let's look at this. How does someone with such physical challenges get to a stage like that? The answer lies in his family. Because in the case of Ghanim Ali Muftar, his family didn't just care for him, they empowered him. They taught him that his challenges were not limitation, but opportunities to inspire and lead. So they gave him the confidence to dream big, the strength to pursue his goals, and the platform to amplify his voice. So now, Ghanim word that they weren't just powerful, it was really transformative. He didn't just represent himself, he represents every child who has ever been told you can't. So his leadership was a direct result of the love, the resilience, and the advocacy of his family. So this kind of story reminds me of the vital truths about leadership, that this starts at home. So it is in the way a parent encourage their child to believe in their ability, especially in the quiet sacrifice, the tireless advocacy, and the unwavering belief that every child, no matter their ability, they have the potential to lead and inspire. So as we look at Ghanim Al Mufta's story, his story is not just an individual success. It's a story of a family that dare to believe in the extraordinary. So they believe that, yes, it can, and they gave him the support. So families and community can create same opportunity for that, for our children to rise, lead, and make their mark on the world. So once again, once again, when we say families who raise children with disability, we also look at the resilience aspect, because it's not something they are being born with. It is something that is built over time. Because for families raising children with disability, resilience becomes a way of life. So it's about facing the challenges as on and finding ways to keep going. So even when the road ahead is feel uncertain, if they don't even know where they are going to. So I've seen families go through incredible tough times, whether navigating the hardship of maybe the economic or the healthcare aspect. So dealing with the financial aspect, or finding the strength to keep up with the demand of the daily life. So, and I've also witnessed the quiet and the powerful moments where family rise above everything. So they just have to keep moving, because they just have to give the child the necessary thing that it needs. So all this kind of strength is not just there. So it's just okay to admit that things are not always easy, that you don't always have all the answer. So in those moments, families of friends or from the community. So I believe that the resilient family don't just endure, they adapt, they learn, and they grow. And this kind of family find the creative ways to overcome obstacles. And while doing so, they build an inner strength that becomes a foundation for everything they do. So in all, I believe that families also need support to be resilient. They need that space where they can rest, where they can recharge and lean on others, because it is not easy. So it's important that we as a society, we can create those spaces, whether through support groups, community resources, or simply being there for one another. So we shouldn't see them like, oh, it is your child, so you just have to bear it alone. No. So no family should ever have to go through this journey alone. So we need to assist them in one way or the other. So because when we strengthen the resilience of this family, we don't just help them survive. So we are trying to help them to lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the answer. We are really grateful. So moving on, Chioma, we are going to be asking you a very sensitive question. And the question is, what does the Nigerian law say about having people with disability in positions of leadership? Chioma, I would go again with the question. What does the Nigerian law say about having people with disability in the leadership position?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Our guiding law for protection of persons with disability remains the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act 2018, right? And a number of provisions are there on the rights of people with disabilities. However, there are specific rights, okay, right? So narrowing it down to your question about leadership, there are specific rights and provisions there for people with disabilities. I would very quickly mention that the law encourages people with disabilities to go into positions of leadership, whether it is political or economic or religious or any endeavor. You are you're very, very protected, very encouraged to vie for any position. And like I had mentioned earlier, nobody is coming to save us in quotes, because if you are not in a place of authority, if you're not a policymaker, how would policies that cater to your needs be met efficiently, and how would they be implemented effectively? And so it's usually positions of leadership that influence the enactment and the enforcement of laws that are beneficial. And so the law is very, very clear on promoting the inclusion of persons with disabilities in various aspects of the society. And then when it comes to employment, the law mandates that public institutions reserve at least 5% of employment opportunities for persons with disabilities, right? It also establishes the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities to monitor and enforce compliance. So you cannot be turned away because of your disability. No, it's not possible, right? The law is there to to make sure that there is a form of social inclusion, ensuring that people with disabilities actively participate in leadership, whether it is at their place of employment or at being, self-made entrepreneurs, or going for electoral positions for them to be voted into office, or however they want to lead. The law is very clear. The law says we support you. The law says nobody should look down on you. Nobody should say no to you because you are a Nigerian citizen, and you get the chance to live the same life that anybody can live when it comes to leadership. Again, enforcement is our challenge, right? And then, daring to go for what it is that we want. Interestingly, the National Commission for Persons with Disability, they are waking up. There is a strong network brewing right now of persons with disabilities in various states, in various platforms. From the national dialogue we had a couple of weeks ago, I got to understand that there is an association for people with intellectual disorders. Right, I didn't even know. I didn't even know that they had that they had an association. And so you see, these networks all around us form a form of solidarity and strength, and a reminder that wherever you are, regardless of your disabilities, we see you and we recognize that you can be a leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Chioma. We are grateful. Thank you, Chioma. Thank you so much. So, moving on, we'll be asking Barakat a last question for her. Please, Barakat, can you unmute your mic? I love the way you also started your video. It was highly interactive. Thank you. So, to Barakat, the last question is, what are the ways we can advise the society to ensure inclusion in schools as well as families for children with disabilities? I'll come with the question again. How can we advise, or how can you advise the society to ensure that schools, families have inclusion for children with disabilities? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Okay. Um, okay, let's take a moment to reflect on this. What does true inclusion in schools and social setting mean for children with disability? Because for me, it's about more than just physical access or accommodation. It's about creating a culture where every child, regardless of their ability, feels valued, respected, and supported. Because in an inclusive environment, they are not just there to have, they are not just there to have, they are essential. When children with disabilities are included in schools and social settings, they gain an opportunities to learn, to grow, and develop alongside with their peers. At the same time, their peers also without disabilities, they learn to the importance of empathy, the respect, and teamwork. Because I think inclusion is really important. So people, we need to, especially everybody in each community, we need to adapt to inclusion. Because when we do this, it's going to help every one of us, especially children with disability. So it won't look as if we neglect them. It won't look as if we see them as someone not being valued, because every child has his or her own potential they have potential in them. So we need to see them, we need to include them in things that we are doing. We need to see them as someone being valued, because when we do all this today, it helps to build confidence and their communication skills. Because when children with disabilities are part of inclusive environments, they learn how to communicate, they form friendship, they will be able to express themselves confidently. For example, imagine a child with autism participating in a group project at school. So this is an opportunity not to allow them to showcase their skill, but also help them develop the confidence to interact with their peers. Because also, when we apply inclusion, it teaches empathy and respect for diversity. Because inclusion benefits everyone, not just the children with disability. Their peers without disability, they will learn to appreciate differences and build empathy. So this interaction creates a generation of individuals who value diversity and understand the importance of equity in all aspects of life. And also, in an inclusive environment, it will help these children with disability, it will help them to step into leadership roles, because when they see that they are being valued, they are being respected, so they are being accepted, they feel included. So they will be able to take on responsibility. They will be able to do things like, oh, I want to do this. Okay, for instance, I said I once had a sister that has speech challenges and cerebral palsy. When she was alive then, and sometimes if people are doing something at home, she feel like participating, like she really wants to do, then I would say we don't really have knowledge about, because then I was still young. So I don't have knowledge about anything about disability. Same thing as my mom, we don't have any knowledge about it. So it was later when I gained admission to school. So that was when I realized and learned things about disability. So that was when I started educating myself about special needs children, their courses. So I realized then that whenever we are doing something, she would like to participate. She wants to do. She really wants to do. But then because we see her that you that you can't do it, so you can't do it the way we want it. We can't be satisfied. So we try to shut her up or neglect her. No, don't do it. Just sit down. So then, and that thing really affect her, because I realized that then, we don't allow her to do anything. So we just, take a bath, we feed her, then sleep. After sleep, she wake up, look at us. We do not allow her to do things. We do not include her in everyday activities. And that thing really affect her, because her fine gross motor skill, which is her hand, her leg, she feel you just see her that maybe she's not included into the family. So with that, she can't take up responsibility on herself. She can't do anything unless we do it for her. And I see that is really bad. If we had known then, we would have tried hard to make sure that she also participates in things at home. So if they are able to do this, so this child, they will be able to take on leadership, they will do things by themselves, they will wish to do it. And when they are doing it gradually, their growth, it will change everything about them, it will be changing gradually. So for instance, also a child that might organize a classroom event, lead a group discussion, or advocate for accessible changes in their school. So when they do all these things, so these experiences will build their resilience and leadership skills that will last a lifetime. So all these things that they are doing is not just for a limited time. So when they are doing all these things, it will really last them. It will really make them able to do things for a longer period. So how can we now promote this inclusion? Because when we are talking about inclusion, we want these children to feel included, we want them to feel valued, we want them to feel accepted. So how are we going to do that? So now let's talk about how we as a community, that is the families itself, because everything still lies on the family. There's nothing, everything still lies on the family, because the family is the first teacher, is the person going to advocate for the child. Is the same family that will still tell the child that this is the thing that you're supposed to do, speak for the child, because no one will do that except the family. So when we say the family as their community, they are the one that can promote this inclusion in schools and the social setting. So they will encourage participation in everyday activities. This inclusion starts with small. It's not necessary for you to start with big thing. Like you can start anywhere. Like let them do meaningful things, meaningful action. Schools and families can encourage children with disability to actively participate in daily activities. Let them plan meals. Let them be able to organize events or choosing family outings. So all this experience will give them a sense of responsibility, and it also help them to see themselves as valuable contributors. Especially also, if they are able to do this, it also create opportunity for leadership roles. Children with this disability should have access to leadership opportunities in school, in communities. Okay, let me give an instance now. There are some schools that schools can involve them in like student councils, group projects, or anything events in the school. Let us try to include them. Let us seek for their opinion. Let us hear them. Let us listen to them, because we can gain points from whatever they are saying. So in social setting also, we should encourage them to take on roles like leading a neighborhood cleanup when they are doing maybe environmental sanitation in school. We should just do allow them to just sit down inside, like, oh, because you can't do anything. Yeah, you have cerebral palsy, you can't walk. You just have to sit down because they believe that you cannot do anything. No, let them do it. Even if they cannot do it to your taste, let them take that part. Let them just try to do it. Or let them advocate for their accessibility. Also, and most importantly is that teachers need to be trained, because when we say advocacy starts with the parents, the families. Also, the teachers also play a critical role in promoting inclusion, because schools must provide professional training on inclusive practice so that educators can better understand the needs of children with disability. So, or like now, it might include modifying lesson plan, using assistive technology, or finding creative ways to engage all the learner. Doing that also, we are raising an awareness among the peers in the classroom. Awareness, because awareness is very important. Create an awareness about children with disability. Tell them that, although, okay, for example, a child that has learning disability, that one does not mean that that kind of child cannot succeed. That does not mean that the child cannot do any other tasks. So with that, we need to encourage people, the students in the classroom. So when you do all these things, it's going to break down barriers. So schools should try to organize the workshop. They should try to make an awareness days where students learn about disabilities and the importance of inclusion. Because for instance, what we think about like what we are doing now, it creates an environment for everyone to feel respected and valued. And also, what I think is that we
Your
should try to
time.
advocate for policy.
Yes, ma. So just you can conclude now. You still have some
Okay,
questions.
okay. I was sorry. Okay, so
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So I just encourage everyone that think about ways that we can advocate for inclusion, because in our own community, it's very just ways that can help children with this disability. So we should make them feel included, we should make them feel accepted in whatever we are doing, because all these steps which will lead to a big change, honestly. And these changes can create a world where every child, regardless of their ability. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. It seems Barakat came so loaded. Thank you so much. Because of our time, we'll be moving on to the last question with Irene Basi. Irene,
Okay.
thank you so much. Thank you. So, our
Welcome.
last question. Thank you. Our last question will be: Irene Benson, and the question comes up like this. Can she hear me? Can you all hear me? Okay, thank you so much, Ma.
I can hear you.
So, okay, thank you. So the question is, what have been your driving force for people with disabilities? And also, how have you been able to manage PWDs in the University of Georgia as the disability resource manager? And how can this be tailored to universities and institutions, especially in Nigeria? Should I come again with the question? Okay. Ma, can you kindly unmute?
I'll start with
Thank
the
you.
driving force, but then I might ask for you to give me a little bit more. And I'll be succinct for this. For me, it starts personal, right? I feel like in this field, it if you're not in this field and you're not in this space, then like I said earlier, you're not going to necessarily realize who's missing, right? That's a big piece. Who's missing at the table? Who's not coming because they feel like they don't belong? And um and how why don't we have those voices, right? We start once you kind of get that light bulb moment when you do see and you realize that there are barriers and that people are being excluded. It's kind of hard not to stop seeing that through that lens. And so um personally, it's always been something that I've been passionate about, like I mentioned with my best friend growing up. And then professionally, I just kind of fell into it. And didn't plan on going into this field, but have found it to be challenging and rewarding. Every day is different, and I really like that. I'm always learning something new, but most importantly, it's working collaboratively together to help facilitate understanding, to learn and listen to those who feel like their voice isn't being heard, and then the creativity and problem solving and coming up with ways to identify a solution. But that gets exhausting, and so I think that goes back again to the fact that we need to have legislation and laws that have teeth and are actually enforced. But we also have to get the perception of the community to change as well, so that we can have that proactive design piece when we're thinking about new spaces and the things that we're creating, because we do have a lot of power in that. So for me, that's been the big force, is to help get the word out, help bring people into this space with disabilities and without, to be able to look towards the future. And then Favor, I would love for you to give me the second part of that question.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma. The
That's perfect.
second question,
Yeah.
the second question is, how have you been able to manage people with disabilities in the University of Georgia as the disability resource manager? And how can this be tailored to our own universities here in Nigeria? Thank
Yes.
you.
Lovely. Here, our
Okay.
legislation came into place started in the 70s, and then in the 90s we got the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we've had some legislation in place for quite some time, and we have made great progress. So the new buildings that are being built have to be accessible. We're seeing more and more students that did primary and secondary school, continuing their education into college and the university. And so one is just being able to face that and realize this is a growing population. And the things that we're doing and putting in place for access is working. And it's allowing people to fully demonstrate their knowledge, their skills and abilities. And it allows for us to have that great depth of various experiences and perceptions through a diversity and inclusion lens. And so we really do kind of lean into that aspect of, yes, there's law, but at the same time, my goal really is to make sure that when a professor has a student come into their class and they do have a need for access or accommodations, that they're excited to have that student in the space because they know what benefit that brings to the entire learning community. And they want to make sure that the knowledge that they have to share is being reached to everyone. So a big thing for me and my goal has kind of shifted to how do we change people's perceptions and awareness to make them realize that the things that we're doing are going to benefit everyone. It's a long journey. I look at every opportunity that I have to get to work with a faculty member to figure out and learn what's scaring them about the process and helping them to see the benefit that it will help for all their learners. And more importantly, the fact that that student who earned their right to be there has the same experience as their peers to learn and engage. So that's a big piece of my model. And so what we've really been focusing on lately is how do we support the faculty and the administration to get that buy-in, to continue to put in policy and procedures that are inclusive. And so that's been a lot of my focus, while my team is primarily focusing on the student and what their individualized needs are. For how can this be replicated in other spaces? I think the first thing is getting a kind of a good sense of what your university or organization, what it looks like now. And what are those gaps? What are those things where we need to put our energy into in raising awareness? And then also, unfortunately, having to build that case too to help people realize that this isn't just one person. This isn't just relies on a person who identifies as a person with disabilities, but it's helping the learning for all, improving the learning, and improving the access and sense of belonging for all. So I really start kind of in any space, really kind of doing that needs assessment. And the most important piece to me in that is hearing directly from the students about their experiences previously and what barriers they're hearing or experiencing, and then working from that to figure out how we can build a plan for change. So I think that's my answer to that very well-crafted question.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We are grateful. So for us to meet up with our time, we'll be moving on to questions. Please, does anyone have question?
I have a question. Can I ask? Can I go ahead?
Hi, Favor. I think you're muted. Yes, please. Maybe you can go ahead.
Thank you so much for this insightful webinar. I've actually learned a lot, and one of the things I'm taking away from this webinar is the fact that this advocacy is for all of us, whether you are currently with physical disability or not, because I think it was the lawyer or the barrister, I've forgotten her name now, that mentioned the fact that it can happen to anybody at any time. You know what I mean? As simple as an accident can lead to, you becoming someone with disability. And so it boils down to the fact that this advocacy is for all, and that is really sticking with me, even after this webinar. So my question is that when we have like special attentions for people with disability, like maybe a special place, and all of that, how can we help people not to think about it as, coming from a place of segregation? Because I'm asking this question because I used to have a boss that has a crutch, and when people are going to work, they bring their children to that crutch, and there is a particular child, I think as at then was about 3 years old, and I don't know what she had, maybe Down syndrome or something, but I know she wasn't walking, and like at intervals, saliva comes out of her mouth. So when other people bring their children, I hope you can hear me. I'm feedback. Okay. So when other people bring their children to that crèche, they usually feel somehow like some other parents. Some of them go as far as telling the owner of the crèche that they should not put their children with the same place with that child and all of that. So there was another separate place. So that child is always there. When she needs attention, they go there, feed her, but she couldn't like have time to play with other children and all of that. So I don't know. I wasn't in the mental space of the mother, but each time she comes, you can see that she wasn't happy because to her, a child was being secluded from other children. Now, in the face of another person, it will be that, oh, we're putting your child in a place where she needs to get all the special attention that she needs. So how can we help people, out of this sentiment of seeing this special need, this special attention as what these people actually need to survive, as a form of like getting equity leverage, to also be on the same pedestal with everyone, and not necessarily something as segregation. I don't know if my question makes sense, but I think that's the best way I can frame it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you. I think Barakat can answer this question since she has been answering questions that are related to family and society accepting people with disabilities. Barakat, please, can you answer this question?
Okay. To me, I think, firstly, I want us to understand that there are several resources and programs that have been available for families that have children with disability. Truly, we know that, truly, I said inclusion really matters wherever children with disability, wherever they are. So we need to adapt inclusive practice to with them. But at the same time, families need to understand that there are different, we have several resources and programs that is being specialized to children with this disability. Like for instance, the special education program. For instance, now let me start with the special education program, which is tailored educational program designed to address the unique needs of students with disability. So this educational program involves individualized instruction, resources, and support to help these students achieve their full potential. Because putting child with disability together with children that does not have disability at that age, it is not all school that adapt, that understand how to treat children with disability. So to me, I think the parents is supposed to understand or look out for resources or programs that will benefit the child first So it's going to equip that child and make that child, it will help the child in the growth development. So because when we look at when we look at this specific program given to them, it will also help that child with these challenges to it is going to address their needs, because this special education program provides solution to the unique needs of this learner. So the school should also allow them participate in things. But before moving to that one, but I just want to understand that that kind of parents, they should be able to look out for resources, the kind of program that will be more beneficial to the children, to that kind of child. So with that age, when that child is well equipped, so you can make the child get included in other schools that has children with disability. Because to my own, I believe that children with this disability, when they are being cared for in this special education program, when they take them to that place, they will teach them things that will build their self-confidence, the things that will equip them, that will make them stand out, so that other people will see them. They will not see them based on their disability. They will be able to see the value in them. Hope you are getting my point, ma. Hello, ma. Hello.
We
Yes,
are here with you.
I'm with you.
Okay. Okay. Now, because let me use that as an instance to round it up. For instance, a child that has speech challenges, that kind of school. Okay, if the child is taken to a school whereby they practice inclusive education, that kind of child that has speech development can be introduced with technological tools like assistive, augmentative, and alternative communication. So with that, it will also help that child to express their ideas. They will be able to equip that kind of child. So that child will be able to know how to make use of things that will be able to make them to defend themselves, to be able to speak up for themselves, advocate for themselves, participate fully in action. Also, the parent also should make sure that they could involve in organization. They should try to look out for organization that talk about their children needs. So with that, they will be able to learn more and have knowledge about their child needs. So I think with that, I'll be able to explain your question.
Yes, thank you so much, Barakat. We are grateful. Because of the want of time, I would just read out one of the questions from the chat box, and any of the guest speakers can answer this question. So, assessing support for people with disabilities is always affected. Assessing support for PWD is always affected by funding. How can NGOs like Yield Up Initiative be positioned to get support for their initiatives to give people with disabilities more opportunity in education and human capacity? So any of the guest speakers can answer. Should I come again with a question? I'll come again one more time. Assessing support for people with disabilities is always affected by funding. So how can NGOs like Yield Up Initiative be positioned to get support for their initiatives to give people with disabilities more opportunities in education and human capacity? Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I will just quickly say that opportunities could mean, it could be very relative, and it's always mostly not always about funds. I'm grateful for this maiden edition from Yield Up Initiative. It means that there is a lot of leadership capacity inherent in this organization. And I want to applaud everybody that has put this together. So now this is an opportunity that Yield Up is maximizing. And while this is a low funded project, if Yield Up wants to do big maxi funded funded projects, there are a number of things that I would suggest. Number one, of course, international grants are very helpful. There are also national grants here and there. And number three, I would also say that there is strength when we work together. And so organizations that support or that their thematic areas revolve around disability inclusion and support have networks. And so being a part of this network is also very helpful. Identifying with federal development agencies, getting registered with different ministries that speak to your area is also very helpful. Because you now get to have national partners being part of the policy making arena on disability in your country, whether you're in Nigeria or wherever you may be, is also very helpful, because how do you influence policies and how do you get the climate you want to see if you're not in the room, in the policy making room? Um, Collaborations, healthy collaborations are very important. There are different stakeholders in the industry that will get the objectives of organizations that want to support people with disabilities. And when you have healthy collaborations, it will really help you. And so you don't even need so much money to be on radio to talk about the disability law example. All you need is someone who is an expert in it, who is going to be willing to come and speak on radio. And then you have a collaboration with the media house where you say, oh, okay, you are going to be mentioned in our programs, you're going to be mentioned as a sponsor, just give us 5 minutes of your airtime or 10 minutes. And you'll be surprised at how it works. Sometimes we think they may not agree, but then they will agree. You just haven't tried. Collaborations with traditional gatekeepers in the different traditional platforms that speak to the grassroots is very important. Collaborations with religious leaders, because whether you like it or not, Nigeria is a very religious country. It's very important where you get to speak their to their congregation. So healthy collaborations here and there that may not need funding. It's very cardinal, but you have to be very strategic about it. And for those that need funding, yeah, there are grants like I had earlier mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chima. That was really, really enlightening. We are grateful. Thank you so much. So, moving on, I want to really appreciate all our guest speakers. I would say I came in here with too much expectation and I was blown away. Thank you so much. So, for me, I would say takeaway notes would be inclusion begins with each one of everyone, not just the family. It starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with the family, it starts with society. Because if we are all waiting for the government, the Nigerian law to, finally give a policy that includes all people with disabilities, it's going to take a while. But I would say inclusion begins with each and every one of us. Have you ever been rejected before? Have you ever gone to maybe a ministry or an organization where accessibility is quite difficult? But with each one of us putting our heads together, inclusion for people with disabilities would become more easy. So from Barakat, she said, empathy is the core, value for encouraging those with disability, identify and nurture your unique talent. I would say we have learned a lot and we are grateful to all the guest speakers. Thank you so much. So for the closing remark, can we all welcome Michael?
Hi everyone. Hi Favor. Can you guys hear me? All right. So
Yes, we
I
can.
do not
We can.
think
We can.
the call. As for myself, I don't think it's on the call again. So we'll just go ahead. So to our amazing panelists, we are very grateful that you spared your time to be here with us. It was really awesome getting to learn from your wealth of knowledge. And to everybody that registered, that stayed up until this moment, thank you very much for your time. And I believe we have picked up lessons from this webinar, and we're going to utilize it effectively. The key thing I want us to take away from here is that we are all involved with this, and let's go make it happen. Thank you very much, everybody. We would communicate more with us, with everybody for our next event. Yeah, when we'll be having our next event. Thank you very much. Have an amazing evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.